Meet Pirate Software, aka Jason Thor Hall, a 37-year-old best known for blowing up in the YouTube algorithm in late 2023 due to posting bucket loads of YouTube shorts and live streaming 10 plus hours a day almost every single day. He's known for portraying himself as this deep-voiced, super smart guy who worked as a game dev at Blizzard for 7 years, and even has a soft side running a ferret sanctuary in his own home for the betterment of the animals' lives. This portrayal as a knowledgeable, nice guy who works in the gaming industry alongside blowing up in the streaming sphere would get him connections to streamer Ludwig as he would become the director of strategy of Off-Brand Games in summer 2024. And overall, things seem to be heading in a good direction for the guy. However, during one faithful streaming day, Jason would find himself in a bit of a sticky situation, to put it lightly. A situation that would open up a rabbit hole that shows a controversial history dating back almost 2 decades ago as of this video, and a controversial history that continues to build more and more with every passing day. Welcome to OnlyFans, a World of Warcraft guild made up by the biggest of the big in the streaming world to play the game and make content together. The biggest kicker of this guild is that it's a hardcore variant of the game, similar to Minecraft Hardcore where if you die, you lose your character and have to start up a brand new one, with it taking upwards of 200 plus hours just to level up your character to the max. This made dungeons and raids a whole lot more important and tense both for the streamer and the viewers watching, and so given this extra tension plus the star power of the biggest streamers in the world all working together, it was a recipe for success on that side of the internet. Jason was one of the many members of this guild and would of course play the game because it's easy views and a way to network with other streamers and make connections and such. He was doing alright for himself, but that would all change on January 12th, 2025, as during the dungeon raid after things got a bit hairy, someone would make a call to run away, Jason would indeed do so, but they would try to salvage it as he would continue to run away before 2 members died. The issue here is that despite the call to run, everyone else would be mostly backing up and still trying to salvage the play and help others, whereas Jason took off completely, and most importantly out of all of it, he had enough time to come back and try to save his teammates. This is what is called roaching out in the WoW community, and it didn't help that as Jason was arguing about how he didn't have enough mana to save him, he would hover his mouse over the mana gem item for a split second before choosing not to use it, as well as having a robe item that gives him mana back on use, and on top of that would also use an ability to waste mana to make it seem as if he had no chance to help save him when they look in the corner at his stats. This is clearly a roach out and there ain't other way around it. Jason could have tried to help save him and he chose not to because he was scared of losing his character. It's clearly an L on his part, but instead of letting the other guild members explain to him how he roached out and let 2 people die in the process, he would instead rage quit the Discord call and act as if they're all the wrong ones, when in fact, he was the wrong one the entire time.
What do you want, man?
Let me say it again.
He already said his piece.
Pirates.
Go on.
Oh,
Yeah, I want to speak to him because I didn't speak to him correctly. I said it again. We all did mistakes, bro. Like I didn't say, we are just blaming you. It's about the zero accountability is what makes us so mad.
There's no zero accountability, dude. Everyone can do something better.
No,
but when you open up and you yell over another person
listen,
like you were doing
can I speak?
Nah, I'm good.
You...
See ya. I'm not doing that shit again with him. Nah, he did it the first time. I'm not doing it a second one. Not interested.
Now I can understand someone getting mad in a heated moment when it feels like everybody's ganging up on you, and most times people will chill down, think it over the night, and come to the conclusion that they were indeed the one who screwed up the play. However, Jason isn't like most people here, as due to his 7 years working at Blizzard, he knows the game better than anyone else around him and would start to ban people saying the word mana in his chat, with the term mana gem in specific leading to a permaban for making fun of him.
It was 2,975 bans and 1,357 bans on process, and Kronos was told to kill himself 20 times.
That's right, almost 3,000 people were banned in his chat simply for making fun of the guy, and it wasn't even anything heinous or mean, it was simple clowning that any other streamer has been through 1,000 times already. However, people could see that Jason here reacted very poorly to being made fun of, and so that alongside his holier-than-thou know-it-all attitude, and very quickly he would start to become a piece of online content in the gaming sphere as people started to realize he's kinda just a straight-up asshole. Jason would get his own version of a classic WoW Chinese copy pasta made making fun of him and would also permaban people for pushing it in the chat, and other OnlyFans guild members themselves would start to clown on him and make fun of him for leaving his teammates behind. It was pretty funny because at the end of the day, all he did was screw up a play and not accept responsibility for it, but because he was continuing to fail to accept that it was his fault and he was being very antagonistic towards anybody who made small jokes about him, it started to become a bigger issue than it initially seemed. As the clowning would continue on and people would even add his face to the WoW wiki entry for Roach, he would top the charts of the livestream fails subreddit as clip after clip of him roaching out and other streamers reacting to him roaching out would be posted, showing that this news was going nuclear in the gaming sphere. More interestingly, almost every single streamer talking about Jason will all start to say why they believe he's full of shit and not even try to defend him, something that is extremely odd, as if there's one thing that's known about the streamer world, it's that it's virtually impossible to get into any controversy if other big streamers are backing you up. Except in this case, not a single person was backing him up except Asmongold, but when it's 2 people versus 20 plus in an online sector that majorly relies on the populace opinion for how long and far things will go, it was clear that a lot of people didn't like him and only had him around because he was a big figure and therefore good networking connections. Soda Poppin', the owner of OnlyFangs, would even side against him, saying how Jason propping himself up as the most important mage of the guild was just his ego speaking and that he should take some responsibility for how things went down in that raid instead of crying about being made fun of online. Hell, even another clip of him just being a pompous, smug asshole to a new player of the game called Lakari would be found, showing that Jason clearly isn't the nice guy he portrays himself as, but someone who punches down in order to prop himself up higher than those around him, something that perfectly lines up with how he would always portray himself as the smartest guy in the room at any moment he can.
You basically have to evocate to get your mana back for the next pull.
Reminded me, sorry, I don't play the game, so I forget. If you remind me, I can help you out real quick.
Yeah, it's too bad I'm the only mage in the party. You're right, Chad. If only someone else would cast Arcane in. If only.
Can't really keep wishing for things that just aren't here, though.
That is true.
That's true. That's true. Can't wish for the rogue. Can't wish for another mage to cast Arcane in.
Yeah.
Brother, may I have some oats? Oh, since we have 2 mages, we could probably poly the ads.
Wait, we have 2 mages. Oh, man.
Yeah, I can poly.
Here I've been the only one casting Arcane in. Incredible.
Oh, that's crazy.
You know, obviously everyone knows that people dying in a video game isn't a big deal at all. It's the way Jason has been treating things and his general asshole nature being ramped up to 11 here. It doesn't help that in his eventual response a day later, he only had one part where he made any sort of apology, in which he says that everyone made mistakes despite that being untrue as he had plenty of time to come back and try and save his teammates. Also throwing in how he's an ex-Blizzard employee in there because of course he would, to try and make it seem like he knows what he's talking about. The best part to the response is the next part after, however, in which I'm just going to read it out because of how absurd it is. To pin that on a single person is absurd at best, and if you're calling for death and cancellation over it, you're too invested in this content in a very unhealthy way. If you're a creator engaging in this kind of behavior, then eventually your content wave will end, but the relationships you've sullied will be permanent. I hope it was worth it for you. That's right. Instead of Jason just taking the L, he tries to shift partial blame onto his teammates and told every creator who talked about this stuff that he's cutting them off for good for engaging in this current content wave. He's so butthurt people are making fun of him that he's literally cutting off anybody who was talking about it in a negative way. And the immense insecure egotism going on here is hilarious, as all he had to do again was take the L and admit he roached out. Instead, he would double down and pretend everyone is out to get him despite the criticism he was getting being 100% deserved. Jason would continue to double down and be an asshole as he made it clear he wasn't going to admit he roached out, and in this clip I'm about to play, he rants how those cannibalizing him will eventually have it happen to them one day, still not realizing that he's the asshole here and believes everybody else is instead.
And for all the content creators that were out there trying to cannibalize me to boost their numbers for a little while, that may work for now. But in the future, no one's going to want to do anything with you other than other people that also want to cannibalize you. You're going to surround yourself with assholes. That's going to be on you, bud. That's shitty for you, to be honest with you. And I feel bad for you. Straight up. So have your minute and have fun.
It gets funnier as he would admit in a stream that he didn't even want to go back to help to begin with as he was fully on his roach shit by the time he ran. And people would even start to clown at him about how he uses a voice changer to have a deeper voice. Oh yeah, I was saving this for later in the video, but fuck it. Jason here has a completely different voice when speaking compared to streaming. Just take a look at the 3 clips I'm about to play here.
It's actually been amazing. It's our first time out here at Denver Comic Con, and there's so many people, and they love the games, so it's been awesome.
Yeah, that's correct. Software and game development's finally a category in Twitch, and now it's up here at the Streamer Awards, so yeah.
Why are you like this?
You're the one that has the camera on.
And you just can't resist. You just can't resist.
I can't.
I'm gonna put the camera on you when you're streaming.
It's very obvious that he's at least partially insecure about his voice as people figured out that he uses filters, and even though he says it somehow magically dropped when he was 33, I find it hilarious that the dude who props himself up like this high and mighty person has to use filters to make his voice sound deeper so people won't make fun of him. I also believe he does this because deeper voices tend to subconsciously attract people more, for example Elizabeth Holmes, and he's using this as a way to get more audience members as that's just how human nature works. People with deeper voices tend to grow better in general spaces like this. I think he trained himself to talk deeper in general alongside having some filters on stream. And anyone who doesn't believe this is either ignorant or running defense for their favorite streamer. And even though this doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, given he's an asshole yet insecure about his voice, I just find it hilarious. As the days progressed, Jason would continue to get clowned up by memes and by random streamers playing WoW and referring to how he took zero accountability for his actions. And during another stream, he'll go on to say that he's documenting and reporting not only all the random people harassing him, which is understandable, but the very streamers who are simply covering the situation on their channels and giving their opinions on the matter. This means that if you're one of those very streamers watching this video right now and you called him a roach or made fun of his normal high-pitched voice on stream, Blizzard will take his reports more serious than any others because if you remember, Jason worked there for 7 years and they totally care about his stuff more so than anything else going on in the WoW community. In fact, Jason is such a serious man who can't even take a joke that he banned someone for simply making a roach joke to him on stream.
Oh, okay. One sec.
What's it?
Just another one. Deleted.
Like, this ain't even bad. It's funny. There's no harassment or nothing going on, but Jason is so insecure about being made fun of that he couldn't even let that one slide despite the guy clearly getting him good. He would also update people and inform them saying that he's banned over 6,000 accounts so far, and also says that big content creators are organizing hate raids against him despite this being a complete lie, showing that he's going completely scorched earth on any content creator who dared speak ill of his name and was trying to use his influence at Blizzard to get them banned simply for making fun of him. This wouldn't bode well for the man, as Jason would end up getting kicked out of OnlyFans on the morning of January 15th, with Sodapoppin confirming as such and saying it was because of him quadrupling down on not admitting he messed up, but I'm sure seeing him brag about using his 7-year working connection to Blizzard to get streamers who were mean to him banned had something to do with it as well. Jason would respond clearly seething about the decision they made to kick him from the group, and other streamers who've talked about him said they started to get blocked by him on Twitter.
Is anyone else blocked from Pirate on Twitter?
I'm not gonna lie, Ozzy.
How do you know?
No,
you're not blocked, are you?
Yeah, I'm blocked, bro.
The news was spreading around the gaming sphere at such an insanely fast rate that not only were WoW players clowning on him, so were League of Legends pro commentators, showing that just in a matter of 3 days he had become one of the quickest laughingstocks in the gaming industry in record time.
Was Renato just completely winning the game alone?
But he is the last man there, kind of like a mage blinking out of the dungeon. He will survive, but the rest of his team, not there.
Jason would eventually put out a brand new response, again trying to say that everyone made mistakes when it was just him, and also talks about how he's banned thousands of people because a lot of them were sending harassing messages, and yeah, there were clearly a handful of people sending some vile shit his way, no doubt. The thing here is that he still fails to understand by this point it wasn't an issue on him roaching. Everybody can see that except himself, no matter how hard he tried to convince people otherwise. It was a fact his egotistical attitude was on full display and people from all corners of the internet were realizing that he's a massive asshole. Top that with hiding his real voice. And it was obvious his act of trying to prop himself as the smartest person in the room was starting to fall apart very quickly in front of him. People would bring up that Lucari clip from earlier of him just bullying the guy, and Jason would try to play it off as it was just light ribbing, when for anybody who's seen it, it was very clearly not light ribbing as Lucari wasn't playing into it and was clearly annoyed with his responses. Jason simply just didn't care. Lucari even had his own thing to say about everything going on, saying that Jason always gives off the vibe that he's better than you and that he needs to feel that he's the best person in the room.
Because he has like this high and mighty attitude like he's better than you when he's not. You remember he's like talking down to me in that dungeon in SM? You remember that? You guys remember that shit? Why do you play mage when you don't like support the team and make water and buff people? Bitch, I'm new, I fucking didn't realize the buff ran out, pussy. And then fucking fast forward 2 months later, this nigga doesn't even know how to press Frost Nova. F yourself, bitch. I'm gonna talk my shit. F him, dude.
Obviously, as we can see, Jason here has a lack of self-awareness and is generally an asshole. If there's one thing I learned throughout my time making content online, is that there's one thing that people hate more than anything, and that's assholes. The way he responded to this entire thing going down made it clear that he's not used to taking accountability for his actions and instead pushes the blame onto others or something else in whatever way he can, even if it becomes delusional. Now, even though the World of Warcraft arc was over by this point as he would announce he was quitting the game entirely, people were still interested in the man, as after all, he's a fully grown 37-year-old who for the last 2 years has clearly been assimilated into the mainstream streamer landscape through his connections, hence him working with Ludwig that I mentioned earlier. This is what got me interested personally, as while I've had hard times caring about stuff such as a bad video game moment, all this about Jason kept drawing me in, and the stuff I found out about him paints a picture of someone who, let's just say, has been acting this type of way for a very, very long time. Meet Maldavius Figtree, Jason's old ferret furry persona that he used to go by during his time playing Second Life way back in the mid-2000s. He started playing the game on May 7, 2006 when he was just 18 years old, and months later on September 16th would start up Darksphere Creations in order to create furry skins for people to wear in the game alongside his accomplice Wingless Emoto. The skins are nothing interesting, just stuff to sell to make money in the game. As for those that don't know, people put real money into Second Life, and making real money in the game is a very common thing that players do. In the details, he would be listed as a programmer rather than an artist, and so he and everyone who worked with him would make their cash selling these skins in the game as everyone wants to make money. Jason's reputation in the furry community seemed to be normal, as in the May 25th, 2007 publishing of a Second Life magazine called the Ava Star, he would have a short interview about the various things he does in the game outside of running Darksphere. He even had an entry on the furry site Wiki for talking about him, showing that he was at least a known figure back in the furry fandom when it wasn't nearly as popular online as it is today. However, things would get hairy that upcoming summer, but before we get into that, we must first talk about what led to it to begin with. Now, I actually went over this entire arc in my video talking about a very infamous Second Life trolling group called Justice League Unlimited and Jason's time with the group, so if you want the entire context, go check out that video. To make a long story short here, Jason was a moderator of Woodbury but was also part of Justice League Unlimited, and the mods decided they wanted to tear things down and start over. Jason did some trolling and trashed the place up before they tore it down, but the developers of Second Life, Linden Labs, would delete the place entirely 2 weeks later, meaning they ruined the plan to start anew. Jason also got kicked out of Justice League Unlimited for this as well because they found out he's a troll himself, but again, if you want the full story, go check out that video. The point is, Jason wasn't some evil and heinous person while playing Second Life. All the higher-ups at Woodbury already planned to tear it down and restart. Jason just decided to do some trolling before Linden Labs ruined the momentum by deleting the place entirely. Of course, his trolling nature would gain him a lot of enemies and a general disdain from the Second Life community, but given his attitude as seen by the Managem incident, it was basically like history repeating itself. This confirms to me that he just doesn't want people talking about his past life and has gone as far as to falsely take down multiple videos talking about it. Oh yeah, forgot to mention earlier, Jason has falsely taken down multiple videos on YouTube talking about him in his past way before this wild stuff started, and the one thing they all have in common is they talk about his time playing Second Life. I honestly don't know what the reason behind taking the videos down is. The best I can assume is he finds it creepy that people are looking so far into the past about him, but it's not like this was private. This was all in a public video game and I managed to figure out he wasn't some evil player, but someone who did end up getting a negative reputation after the Woodbury incident, so take that how you will. There was another notable thing that went down during his time playing Second Life, as on January 20th, 2008, it would come out that Jason fired Wingless Emoto from Darksphere Creations while they were asleep, with the word spreading around Second Life as skin vendors started to delist anything from Darksphere in solidarity for Wingless as Jason was still making money from their work. However, in the comments on an article talking about the situation, it seems that Jason himself would drop chat messages he had with Wingless leading up to this, with them reading out as him getting upset they weren't taking their job seriously just 2 days ago on the 18th. However, another random user would drop more chat messages dated after the firing when talking to other Darksphere members, in which at the very bottom there, Jason would say that Wingless was underage and he found this out because he met up with them in real life, with that also being part of the reason why he fired them. This story would make its way to his current audience almost a decade and a half later in August 2024, in which Jason would respond and say that when he was 19 he met up with Wingless and Moto at 17 but that they didn't go down on each other or anything like that. He was actually 20 at the time, but given how long ago this was, I can chalk it up to misremembering. What's interesting is that he notably says Wingless wasn't fired but rather quit, saying that tabloids do what tabloids do to try and make him look bad. However, by confirming that he indeed met up with Wingless in real life, he confirms the messages are real, and indirectly confirms that he indeed fired them because of being lazy and because they were a minor. I have no idea why he lied about this as it was very easy to prove him wrong here, but either way, he fired them when they were asleep, and the whole meeting up stuff is nothing of interest as I'm willing to bet if he knew Wingless's true age, he probably wouldn't have met up with him because people try to twist this against him knowing how people on the internet are like. Where things get weird is that Jason has confirmed that he and Wingless made up years later and are cool now, and Wingless has gone on to say to others hitting him up about the story that they actually quit the company and wasn't fired. The thing that bugs me about this is again, by confirming he made up with them, he confirms those chat messages are real, and that indirectly confirms the very first message where he said he'd fired them was real. I very highly doubt the person who posted the messages added only one lie while the rest were true, as that wouldn't make any sense, so now things are stuck here in an odd spot. If you ask me personally, I think Wingless and Moto is just trying to have their friends back given they're cool with each other now and are lying about quitting, but I can't really go beyond just my personal belief on how I think things truly went down. I don't think we'll ever get down to the real truth on this one, however, so all I can do here is just move right on ahead on this one. Something that's worth noting, however, is that in the same comments where the chat logs are dropped, there are a multitude of people trashing on Jason and saying a whole bunch of nasty things about him, including references to being a member of Justice League Unlimited. I won't be sharing them in this video, as while they certainly paint him in an extremely bad light, it's all strictly hearsay, and I don't like to promote negative hearsay on the channel like that. However, seeing just how many people were saying how bad of a person he was at the very least showed to me that his reputation in the game wasn't exactly a good one by the time this news dropped. Either way, it seemed that Jason was done with the furry fandom by November 2012, as that very month he would ask to get his wiki fur wiped, and since then it's been a blank page with no way of adding any new info to it. It seemed that he was now ready to move on to brighter pastures, and so as the years would go on, he would get involved in his own personal projects and life stuff that we won't be getting into right now. What we will get into is another notable moment in his gaming life, one that has a lot more going on as well. Now, Jason here was an active EVE Online player back during the late 2000s as well, starting up his account on November 12, 2007 when he was just 20 years old and simply going by the name of Maldavius. He was an active player throughout the years and would join various groups as he grew in the game and became more and more known to the other players surrounding it. However, it was on June 22, 2020 where he would create his own group called the Strybog Clade, where things started to ramp up on his end, and the story surrounding his downfall playing the game is nothing short of fascinating. To make a long story short, in October 2020, the developers CCP Games would add a new area in the game called Pochven, inhabited by a faction called the Triglavians, in which Jason was a part of when he created Strybog. Anybody who was in the area before Pochven was now stuck in it, as when it launched, the gate network to enter and leave the place was completely broken, and so for the next 5 days, players within will learn how things worked in this new part of the game. The gates would eventually be fixed, but it would still be hard for people to enter as they needed a certain standing level of the Triglavians to use them. On top of that, Pochven was a giant boring mess when it launched, as there were multiple bugs throughout and nothing to do. In fact, one of the bugs would be where people would run a raid called Operation Flashpoint, but when they would finish they would get negative reputation points and therefore it would be harder to interact with the NPC network within the game, basically punishing players for completing one of the only fun things to do in the area. To make matters even worse, a new tactic called seagulling would be discovered, in which during a raid a random person could fly in, simply tag an NPC with damage, and then go run and hide and still get the payout when the real team finishes. The reason this was an issue was because payouts split depending on how many people were in the raid, meaning that if there was a raid team of 10 people and the payout was 10 million of the in-game currency called ISK, they would get 1 million ISK each. However, because random people would show up, tag an NPC and hide, they would basically steal all that hard-earned money using this cheap tactic. This made Pochven not only hard to enter, but not even worth the time as it was already born and everything surrounding the fun things to do were either bugged or could be seagulled by lazy players. However, because nobody would bother with the place, those who were already in Pochven, such as Jason himself, would come to realize it's actually a huge moneymaker if you knew what you were doing. He would lead Strybog to easily becoming the biggest group within its borders, as he discovered 15-man raid groups were the best number to produce the highest amount of ISK per completion, and so he would grow his numbers at an exponential rate and basically run the whole system while very few outsiders had any idea what was going on. CCP would eventually fix the negative reputation bug 3 months later in January 2021, and so it seemed that so long as people didn't know Pochven was a moneymaker, things would keep sailing smoothly from within. Now the reason as to why nobody knew that Pochven was such an easy moneymaker was actually quite simple. Here's the December 2024 monthly economics report that CCP drops each month showing the EVE Online economics, in which you can see that the corporate reward payout for Triglavian invasions was 6.2 trillion ISK generated that month. That's a pretty hefty chunk of change these days, and the reason people weren't able to figure out Pochven was such a lucrative place unless you were active inside was because even though it was officially added into the game in October 2020, CCP didn't add the metrics until March 2021. I know in a video he made talking about EVE, Jason said that Pochven wasn't making good money, but I've been told otherwise by multiple people, including those who were on his side within the Pochven borders. All I can say is he's either delusional, misremembering, or outright lying to paint himself as a victim in some way, so I'll be moving on. Now when that March 2021 monthly economics report came out and people saw that Pochven was worth their time, they would also find out that Jason was basically running the show from within, and a lot of people already had their grievances with the guy as his reputation in the game wasn't exactly the best. So, on top of seeing a huge money-making opportunity, they also had a chance to directly get back at someone they disliked, and so people would try and enter the space through wormholes as they didn't have high enough standings to enter through the gates. Where things get interesting is on April 15th, 2021, Jason will put out his campaign to be elected to the Council of Stellar Management, a council of 10 EVE players that have direct connections to CCP and meet up in real life at their offices to give insight on the game and help make it better. It's a pretty strong position that holds a whole lot of power, and so knowing Jason and his lust for it, he would make 5 changes to the game if he was voted in, with the most important being that he was asking for the gates to enter Pochven to be unlocked entirely, as by his own words he would say, quote, It's more interesting to have open and dangerous space than it is to have content locked with a brick wall. A few weeks after Jason's post, CCP would actually listen to him and open the gates to Pochven on May 4th, meaning that waves upon waves of people start to enter the system in order to get easy money and get rich just like Strybog and the other clades within. I want to point out, Jason has gone on record asking for the gates to be opened and CCP did it, yet in his video he frames it as if the devs are directly colluding against him by opening them up, despite literally asking him to do that. In the comments when people would bring up the forum post, Jason would say how he was also asking the devs to make it where any new player who entered Pochven would also be put at a disadvantage, but the point here is that he still asked for the gates to be opened and he never told any of his audience. He would then bring up how after they opened the gates, CCP accidentally bugged the NPC guards and that they would attack their own Triglavian aligned members now, but again, the point here isn't that a new bug was now added in the game, it was the fact he got what he wanted by the gates opening. They just didn't put players at a disadvantage when entering, and the bugged NPCs didn't help either as well. This stood out to me as he was leaving out important context that went against the narrative he was pushing in his video, as it's one thing if CCP opened the gates on their own, but we now know that Jason asked for that to happen, it just didn't go exactly how he wanted. Now just 4 days later on the 9th, war would break out in the region. To make a long story short, a group named Electus Matari would attack a group named Malicious Mineral Hounds. The leader of the hounds was friends with Jason, and so Strybog would attack back and win, and then Strybog would continue to go after Electus as they were smaller than them. However, other groups would join Electus as they either didn't like Jason or just wanted to fight for fun. And so as the month went on, it became clear that Strybog was no match for Electus as they weren't good enough PvP players as their opponents. The burnout started to build up on Strybog's side as well, with players waking up at random odd hours of the night with little sleep in order to protect their various structures within, as when Pochven was formed all that was already inside became one of a kind, meaning that once they were destroyed they could never be made again, making them extremely valuable in terms of rarity. The question became not if they'll lose the war, but rather when they'll lose the war, and so Jason would start peace treaty talks with Electus as the war raged on. However, on June 9th, after losing a vital structure to battle, talks would abruptly end, and the next day he would put out his massive plan called the Final Triangle in the Strybog Discord server, that which was basically a giant frontal assault to shift things in their favor as quickly as possible. However, the Final Triangle would amount to nothing, and so on June 16th, after talking with the leaders of his alliances, Jason would put out a message to the war effort titled Let It Burn. This message is very interesting as he starts talking about how when Pochven was first launched, it was a broken mess of boredom and bugs throughout. And notably in the third paragraph starts to talk about how CCP didn't put out the monthly economic report numbers for Pochven for months because of what he said was a region making no ISK despite what had been told otherwise. He would then directly accuse CCP of not adding the numbers into the MER until they fixed the bugs in order to frame them as richer than they actually were, basically saying that the devs are secretly plotting against him in a state of delusion. He would then start to complain about seed goaling and say it was an exploit, but to be fair to CCP, they've said prior when replying to people complaining about it that it was an intended feature, even if it was a rather stupid and cheap one. However, the most interesting part is when Jason talks about the gates opening, in which he tries to frame it as if the devs are directly colluding against him by doing this, but as we already know, he asked for the gates to be opened himself weeks before the war even began. This was easily the most interesting part as it shows just how far he was willing to twist things in order to delude himself and make him seem like a victim. As while seed goaling was a cheap tactic no doubt and the whole bugged NPCs thing wasn't a good thing at all, saying that the devs are directly colluding against him despite having no evidence shows some delusion on some pretty high levels. He asked for the gates to be open and got what he wanted, it just wasn't exactly how he wanted, and add that on top of a war he was losing, he deluded himself into thinking CCP was plotting against him when realistically, he probably just wasn't good enough at the game. The final section of Let It Burn is Jason saying how he and the other leaders met together to figure out what to do, in which they decide to start burning down all their structures and defines the CCP themselves. Now obviously this looks like Jason and the others are throwing a fit about losing the war, so I would reach out to one of the people who was part of his side of the war, Opus Magnum, for clarification on his side of things. He would tell me that the reason they started burning all their structures wasn't just because they were upset with CCP, but also because of the players getting immensely burned out waking up at random odd hours of the night defending stuff they had no chance of defending, so burning them was basically letting things go and a symbol that they didn't need to stress anymore. As for those that don't know, this game has a lot of very hardcore players who can and will play as hard as they can in order to win, even if they have no chance in doing so. That alongside the annoyance of seaguling not being fixed despite asking the devs for it were the main issues, so the burning was a mixture of getting rid of the stress on their members, losing the war, and being annoyed with the devs. The framing in the post is simply to make it sound grandeur in nature and playing to the politics behind the game. As far as the delusional post directly attacking CCP for the MER and opening the gates, he would agree that Jason was stretching it, but at the time he just wanted his grievances to be talked about and didn't really care what Jason's issues were as they all kinda just wanted to get things over with. With that being said, I still believe Jason was deluding himself trying to blame the MER stuff and gates opening on the devs colluding against him, especially again given he directly asked for the gates to be open himself. Now this was basically the end of the war right here as Jason and his side lost, and most people expected he would continue to play the game even if things didn't go in his favor, such as not getting voted onto the CSM after losing his campaign. However, on July 24th, 2021, he would make his final post saying that he would be quitting the game entirely and would pay off all the debts incurred during the war before he left the game. Opus would confirm to me that he did indeed pay off all the debts and didn't just lie and quit on everybody. And given that EVE is a game that people use real money to play, it does show to me that Jason isn't just some deranged man who doesn't care about anyone, as let's face it, he could have just left the game entirely and not paid things off and wouldn't have faced any issues. And I do think it's a respectable thing of him to do, even if he's shown himself to be an egotistical maniac throughout this video. Now as for the exact reason why Jason left EVE Online, I couldn't figure that out. Opus didn't want to speak on it because it's all just negative rumors he was told, and given there was no hard evidence for me to work with, I couldn't figure it out on my own. Either way though, this entire EVE Online arc of Jason's life was interesting, as not only did I learn that EVE is a much deeper game than I ever expected, it showed that the way Jason portrays himself as this hard-headed yet charismatic figure goes back multiple years and that he's quit various gaming communities whenever he starts getting heat his way. Now Jason started the Pirate Software game company in 2016 and released his first title, Champions of Breakfast, on June 23rd that same year. It's nothing crazy, it's just a simple side-scrolling shooter game that doesn't break any barriers or anything like that, and it would be successful enough in the indie sphere to plan a new game for release. Also, I found it pretty funny that he rated his own game 10 out of 10, just thought to show that to y'all real quick. The next game he planned would be Heartbound, an Undertale-inspired RPG that was put on the Steam Greenlight program way back in November 2016, with an impending release date for sometime in 2017. The game would get officially greenlit on Steam just a couple weeks later in December that same year, and in February 2017, Jason would put up a Kickstarter campaign and get just under $20,000 in order to fund the project. In an article on GameDeveloper.com, he would reveal he set the goal low so that when it got crazy numbers, other sites would pick up the story and promote it as a rising star, showing that he well understands human nature and how it works. However, the game would get delayed to sometime in 2018, and eventually in October that year, Jason would announce it would be hitting Steam Early Access in December if everything went by plan. This would come to fruition as the game would come out in Early Access on Christmas Day, and for the next few years would be worked on for its eventual completion one day. However, the game would hit a wall as despite getting out the second chapter sometime in 2019, in 2020 COVID would happen, in which Jason would say online that he got sick throughout the whole year and pretty much lost an entire year's worth of time that he could have put into chapter 3 because of that. This delay would go from 1 year to 3 years, as despite planning to release chapter 3 on Christmas Eve 2023, the date would swing and miss and chapter 3 was still not released despite being in development since 2020. Mind you, this is the guy who promotes himself as the dude who worked at Blizzard for 7 years and has been in the games industry for 20 years, yet he has a game that's been in development for a total of 8 years so far, with 5 of those years being dedicated to just chapter 3 of the experience. This is utterly absurd, and if anything, it shows that ever since he's become a streamer, he realized that he's gonna make a lot more money streaming, so why even work on the game anymore? Even in February 2024 when he blew up in the streaming sphere, someone on Steam would say how all he does is play games now, and he would reply to them getting super defensive about how he's doing all this stuff and how he's busy and how he has a whole bunch of other things going on, saying that he works in Heartbound every single day at the end of the rant, which I'm just gonna say, I highly doubt. There's also this post on a certain fruit farm themed website where a user looked at 164 hours of stream footage to find out that Jason only worked on it for a total of 15 minutes throughout that time, adding even more insult to injury in the process. He also dropped another game called Kill the Moon as well so that he could focus on Heartbound, but let's face it, that game is as good as dead given it's been since 2020 when that happened. Now Jason's coding is its own story, and I'll keep it real. I don't know about coding much and how to properly judge it. However, the examples on screen should be enough to show that he probably ain't the gaming genius he promotes himself as, and in fact, he might even surpass the Yandere dev as their coding looks pretty similar to each other. But hey, I don't want to spend too much time on something I don't know that much about, but if anything, this shows that maybe those 7 years at Blizzard aren't exactly accurate to the way he's been promoting it. Oh yeah, his time at Blizzard. That thing is its own whole story going on. Turns out Jason here is the son of Joey Hall, one of the first 10 Blizzard employees and one of the most important gaming developers in history. In fact, Joey was such an influential figure in gaming history that his look was the inspiration for the fat guy in the South Park episode where they play World of Warcraft together. That's how important he is to gaming in general. Jason would get his job at Blizzard not because of his skills, but because he was the son of a powerful dev. And in fact, for the first 4.5 years, he was a QA guy for the company and never did any dev work at all. He would then start working in security and would do so for about 2.5 years, eventually capping off his time at the company with a year working as a senior red team specialist, basically looking over protection and hacking related things within the company. So, it's pretty easy to see that even though Jason did start working for Blizzard when he was young, the only reason he even got the job to begin with was due to nepotism. However, anytime someone calls him a nepo baby, he gets pretty upset about it despite this being true no matter how you try to spin it.
Anytime people say shit like that, because it's deeply disrespectful and it completely overwrites any of the things that I've done throughout my career as something that is somebody else's success, which they have not been in any possible respect. And it's just rude as fuck. So, what do you say? In the thing, he said it was, he called me a nepo baby. In his article. No, that's dog shit behavior. Really gross.
Now in that clip, he's referring to an article written by Steven Assarch back in July 2024, which at one point in it, he directly calls Jason a nepo baby due to the fact his father's an industry titan, as he put so himself. This would annoy Jason so much that he would reply to the article on Twitter about how he called him a nepo baby. And in fact, Steven would go into a live stream and reveal that Jason had the event they met up at where he conducted the interview to reach out to him in order to try and get that part taken out of his article.
He claimed the article was full of factual inaccuracies. He actually contacted the event that I had interviewed him at and had the event reach out to me in an attempt to try to get the fact that I called him a nepo baby taken out of the article. That has never happened before or since.
Given how Jason has used this prior to take down multiple YouTube videos talking about him in the past, this isn't surprising. I just find it funny, he's so deluded thinking he's not a nepo baby when he is, and he gets mad about it whenever people say so. Don't get me wrong, if you watching this video are in the same spot as Jason, take advantage of the opportunities in front of you, just be self-aware enough to understand that you got where you are because of that connection. It's not a bad thing like how some try to twist it, but it's certainly funny seeing how he gets annoyed when people state a factual thing about him. He just doesn't like feeling as if he's being belittled in any way at all. Now Jason has also been part of the DEF CON hacking conference and won 3 badges doing puzzles throughout the years. He's framed it in the past as he was the big smart guy who carried everything, but he was actually just another member of a large team of people working on things together despite this framing. I'm not going to focus on the hacking skills or the false framing or debate on how much he contributed to the team, but what I will focus on is his claims about the TV show Mr. Robot and why he doesn't like it.
As an OPSEC specialist, how accurate is Mr. Robot? I don't like Mr. Robot. They took some information that they should not have taken from a write-up that I did on some puzzles that I solved at DEF CON, and then they put them into an episode of the show, and I found out about it. And the only source for that knowledge was my write-up. Don't do that. Do you want to know what one of the solutions for that was? It was the Puzzle Master's personal cell phone number, to which he got thousands of calls. Maybe don't put things in your episode if you don't know what it is. Maybe don't do that. Idiots.
Now Jason frames it as if they stole his work and didn't give him the credit for it, and in fact back in September 2016 on Twitter, after the Mr. Robot team posted part of the answer online, he was starting to complain about how they didn't give him the credit he feels he deserves, going on to link his Tumblr post where he posted it. This was from DEF CON 22 in August 2014, and in specific, the part the team posted online was an answer to a simple number to letter cipher down at the bottom there, in which the last 4 parts were taken out because it was the creator of the cipher's name tag 1057, or better known in Leet speak as Lost. What's notable is that in the Mr. Robot tweet, they wouldn't post anything referring to Lost in it, and in fact, it was actually Jason linking his Tumblr post where people found out it was Lost who wrote it, ironically enough. Also, that part where they said they stole his work, turns out you can find the pamphlet they gave the hackers to solve at DEF CON conference itself on the website as well, meaning that it wasn't just his write-up on Tumblr where you can find the answer to the question. So basically, Jason lied saying they stole his work from his Tumblr page, as while it's possible they might have come across it, it's far more likely the Mr. Robot team took what they saw from DEF CON's website itself rather than his post. Also for good measure, here's an example of another team who made their own write-up just like how Jason did, showing that he literally got caught up in his head thinking they stole his work when they didn't and that he was lying to his millions of fans. On top of that, given the Mr. Robot team didn't post the entire cipher itself, people had no way of figuring out Lost's phone number, so on top of trying to take false credit for something and lying about the chain of events to his fans, he also brought more eyes to the very puzzle he said that caused Lost to get a bunch of calls, at least that is, if you believe Lost got any callers at all and it wasn't just Jason lying again to try to make the Mr. Robot team look worse and him look better. It's so bizarre to me he will lie about something so easy to prove wrong, but as we've come to see throughout this video, he has a pattern of just lying about whatever to make him seem like the coolest person in the room. Jason was also caught cheating at puzzle games on stream as well. There were a couple instances of this, but the most notable would be in the game Animal Well in these 2 clips I'm about to show y'all. The first would be when after solving part of a puzzle, it prints out a real sheet of paper in your own house to use. Jason's printer is not located in his room, meaning he would have no idea that a piece of paper printed out unless he knew the steps to solving this already by looking it up either before he started streaming or on his phone. Now watch how this entire ordeal goes down.
One moment. My house is haunted as shit. I just heard, like, somebody walking around, and I went and got my giant spoon, and my machete, because those are the only two things that I have. And I hear someone walking around the wooden floor upstairs. Like, obvious heavy footprints. And I go up there, I'm like, who's in the goddamn house? Because I'm here alone. And I go up there, all the doors are locked, no one's here. And that wasn't like a quiet thing, that was loud enough that I heard it over the game. Okay. We need a nibble. Isn't a nibble half a byte? Let me go pull this up. Yeah, 4 consecutive binary digits or half of an 8-bit byte. So, we're dealing with an 8-bit byte, and this is a nibble. What the hell is that noise? One moment. There's some freaking noise. I need to find out what the hell that is. My house is not haunted. The printer was still plugged in, sitting on the wall. And every time I hit that computer in game, it printed this shit. And then every time it printed it, the paper would fall on the floor and then make a loud noise because the paper was hitting stuff on the way down. And I thought it was a man upstairs. But it was not a man upstairs. It was the game haunting my printer.
That's right. Despite having headphones on and talking so it would be harder to hear noise around his empty house, the paper falling was so loud he thought it was someone walking around his home. This is very easily a lie. He knew what happened because he looked up the steps, and instead of being honest with his chat and saying he got stuck or whatever, he made up some egregious fake ordeal because he just has to be seen as some sort of mega genius to everyone around him. The second clip is pretty self-explanatory. Jason makes a connection to the background wall out of nowhere despite having no reason to even look at it to begin with.
No, there's no remote in my house. That for sure it would be in here, wouldn't it? Wait a minute. Wait. It's the lengths. It's the lengths. This is 4 blocks wide. This is 4 blocks wide. This goes in the top left.
Mind you, this part of the puzzle took the community over a week to figure out, and yet Jason here was able to figure it out in a matter of minutes simply by running around and thinking. Given we know how much this guy lies, it's pretty obvious he looked up this part as well, but just like the last puzzle, instead of being honest with people about it, he has to paint himself like he's some sort of super genius who figured this out way quicker than those normal people out there who spent over a week on the puzzle as a group. Also, a Redditor will point out that the second puzzle we just went over was finally solved on May 19th, 2024, and it just so happened that same day Jason somehow magically managed to figure it out all on his own so quickly. We already know he's lying here, but it's just more evidence the dude is so insecure about looking smart that he has to lie about the way he plays games, and that's just pretty funny at the end of the day if you ask me. On January 17th, 2025, an indie game developer named Brandon will add Jason into his game Idle Streaming Bonanza, in which he uses a cockroach as his persona in some audio clips he ripped off stream.
Evocation's on cooldown, man.
Now the thing is, despite saying he added him into his game, he actually didn't and was just showing off a personal build instead, basically trying to get people to buy his game under false pretenses. That's a tiny bit scummy, and in most cases people would write him off and move on with their day. But Jason here isn't most people, as he will go on to send a DMCA to Steam to get the game taken down off the service. The issue here is that this is the dev's personal build and he never actually added Jason into the Steam version of the game, so this is a false DMCA as Jason didn't even do the proper research into seeing whether he was actually in the game or not. He just saw the clip and immediately assumed he was in the game. Brandon even went to the Pirate Software Discord server to submit a ticket for the false DMCA to get it fixed, alongside filing a counter notice to Steam as well. On stream after getting a counter notice, Jason would tell his chat how Brandon added him in the game and how his moderator Kronos is a copyright lawyer and how he DMCA'd it. But again, as we just saw, this is an illegal DMCA, meaning that Kronos over here must be a pretty stupid lawyer for letting his client make himself out to be a fool to millions of people online.
There was a dude earlier today that went onto Reddit and said that he was using my voice in a video game, showed a bunch of videos of it, and then put that game up on Steam. A lot of people in the thread told him not to do that, that would end up being a legal problem for him. He did it anyway. So I filed a DMCA claim, and he has now filed a counterclaim against me. We're going to take you to court. You're going to lose. You cannot use somebody's likeness or voice in any way inside of your games without their permission. It's a really stupid thing to do. Incredibly so. So I'm going to send this over to Kronos now because he is a lawyer in copyright law. That is his job.
Saying how confidently that Brandon was going to lose despite literally breaking the law to silence a critic of his is hilarious to me. But again, given those multiple YouTube videos that he's falsely taken down in the past, him threatening to silence people with copyright and DMCA is just another thing he does to get the edge on anyone who dares go at him. Brandon even made a video on his channel confirming this was all bait so that he could get attention to his game, completely playing Jason like a fiddle in the process as well.
You're the only person Pally responded to out of thousands of people, I'm aware.
That's totally fine. You took the bait, hook, line, and sinker, because you're the most predictable person on the planet.
YouTuber Frosta Rivia will cover this on his channel and the video will blow up instantly, with it gaining over 200,000 views in a little over a day. With this newfound attention on his illegal DMCA against Brandon, Jason would reply to Frost's Twitter saying that it wasn't illegal despite, as we've seen already, it was, and it was obvious he was just using his typical tactic of manipulating things in his favor as he's done so countless times throughout his life online. Frost would respond showing that when you file a claim on Steam, you check a box saying that you own the copyright, and again, given that Brandon never added him into the Steam release of the game and just his personal build, meant that Jason was directly lying and sent in a false DMCA in order to take the game down because he was being made fun of. Frost would also reveal that Kronos is a lawyer based out of the UK, meaning that the dude didn't even understand US copyright law and was instead pushing his weight around to bully Brandon. This is very apparent in this small snippet of DMs Brandon had with Kronos, in which he says repeatedly that Jason is not in the Steam release in the game and therefore the DMCA is illegal, in which Kronos continues to try and force him to change something that can't be changed because it was never in the product to begin with. Despite being a lawyer, even if based out of the UK, Kronos will show that he's either a very daft person or is doing typical lawyer sleaziness to get his way, and part of getting his way was to threaten Brandon after he had to give his legal information to the counterclaim on the DMCA, as he would tell him, "Nice docs, bud," and say that he was passing over all this information to his local police before kicking him out of the Pirate Software Discord server. That's right, a lawyer threatened to use the docs of their detractor to push him further into their submission, mind you, over something that he technically never did as Brandon never actually added Jason into his Steam build of the game. It seems that Jason likes to surround himself with people who are just like him and who are willing to bully others and argue their way out of a bad spot. And it seems that Kronos is possibly even stupider given that at least Jason never threatened to dox somebody and has only abused DMCA instead. Yeah, talk about one hell of a lawyer here. Meanwhile, Jason would confirm that he's banned over 30,000 people from his stream as he tries to keep his career running. And in another clip on February 2nd would brag about how he's finally updated Heartbound after multiple years of nothing coming from the game.
Average game dev after taking early access money, we released an update for Heartbound yesterday. Average chatter that doesn't know what he's talking about went to Reddit, learned his entire opinion off of Reddit, and then came in here and shit talk.
It turns out that while he did update the game, he updated the beta branch and not the public branch where you normally play the title. And so in a bitterly timed Steam update just 3 days later where Valve added a warning to early access games that hadn't been properly updated in a year, Heartbound would be one of many added to the list of potentially abandoned games. Even though by this point most people know the game is basically abandonware and the only reason Jason is working on it again is because people are trashing on him for it and he knows he can't argue his way out of that one, it was yet another example of people waking up to him being a fraud throughout his gaming dev career. Jason would even try to argue with Steam themselves saying that they improperly labeled his game as potentially abandoned, in which they would point out that an update only counts if it's on the default aka public branch of the title at the bottom reply as you can see. Now this situation, even though it had mostly left the gaming mainstream by this point in time, was seriously negatively impacting Jason's career. I know that canceling people never truly works unless you're doing some illegal stuff online, but I can't sit here and lie saying that it wasn't making an impact as his view counts plummeted after the WoW stuff went down. His Twitch streaming numbers are below half of what he was getting before all that happened, as he was easily getting over 20k concurrent viewers but could barely hit 7 to 8k afterwards. Here's a screenshot of his YouTube views before it got exposed, in which every video was easily over 6 figures of views and even a couple just below are over 1 million. His numbers after that are paltry compared to before, and so even though he lost a chunk of subscribers, it seems that a huge amount who were still subscribed weren't willing to watch his stuff anymore because how much of an asshole he is. Also, you may see right there that one of those videos has a lot of views, and it turns out that on February 20th, 2025, Jason decided to finally respond to everything surrounding him once and for all. However, the video is mostly more twisting and false information, such as how he says his old Second Life name Maldavius Figtree is actually about a TV-themed character he used to run around as and was also part of that Kill the Moon game I mentioned earlier, despite everybody knowing by this point it's actually his furry persona he used to go by back in the day. It's bewildering that he still keeps avoiding the furry stuff and starts to just lie about it to people, and by this point I was thinking to myself there's gotta be something really embarrassing attached to this, otherwise why would he continue to lie about it when everybody knows about this already? Jason also talks about the Ashes of Creation incident where he blamed a teammate for a raid wipe despite it being his fault. But the most interesting part of the first half of the video was when he would admit he hadn't worked on Heartbound for the last year.
Heartbound, the indie game that I work on. People are currently review bombing this. They're very upset, and I can understand why in some of those cases. I haven't worked on the game for the last year. I could have communicated better this entire time though, and that's completely on me. I'm a dumbass for not putting out more announcement posts and releasing information to you guys to let you know that was what was going on, and I was stressed the entire time and acting like a fool.
He's right. He could have just told people that he was focusing on his vastly bigger moneymaker in his streaming career than working on his game, yet decided to give himself this title of being a quote-unquote game dev just to seem more authoritative to his viewers. It's very clear to me in my opinion that he lost the passion for making the game even before his streaming career took off, but he still has the obligation to complete it for those that donated their money. Or he can refund those people who donated and let this negative marking of not being able to complete a game haunt him for the rest of his life, with people at every corner of the internet using it to make fun of him. But as we know, he does not like being made fun of, so maybe he'll actually complete the game out of spite one day. The other stuff is more inane details like how he's a nepo baby, in which Jason denies so despite, again, his father literally being one of the most important Blizzard figures in the entire company's history, and at one point he even plays a clip of Joy Ray himself saying how Jason's boss apologized to him for talking to him out of nowhere, not knowing that Jason was his son.
I remember one time he had, his boss had come to me because he came to me to apologize that one of his people talked to me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, Thor came up and was talking to you, and I don't think that's appropriate and stuff like that. I'm like, okay. I go, just so you know, I'm going to keep talking to Thor when he comes and talks to me because he's my son. This was 2 years after he worked for this guy, and this guy did not know.
So funny thing here, he actually got the timeline wrong. That was 4 years into my career.
Know that Thor was my son, and that it's okay for Thor to come talk to me. You know, but it was in public. It was in the quad at work. But it's like, no, he can talk to me anytime, just like anybody else at Blizzard could come talk to me.
For those who don't understand what's going on there, my own boss didn't know who my dad was. It's really hard to be a nepo baby when the people who control your career have no idea who your connections are.
Now, it's a fun little story about how some people didn't know that he was Joey's son, but really, think about it real quick. Was it Jason's boss who hired him? I highly doubt it, as it's very, very extremely unlikely in such a large company like Blizzard that the boss was the one who was there when he got hired. At that, the boss also very likely wasn't given all the information of Jason's personal details when he sent in his resume to the company, as it would be human resources who would get all that and figure out they were related. On top of that, Jason's last name is Hall, a very simple and common last name, so the boss never put 2 and 2 together because he probably met a couple Halls in his life just as how you might have met a couple Smiths, or in my case, a bunch of Moraleses who aren't related at all. The fact that this is all Jason can come up with really shows that he has nothing to combat the nepotism stuff. He just gets butthurt mad whenever people bring it up and can't accept that it helped him get to where he is in life today. I already said there's no issue taking advantage of the opportunities in front of you earlier, but it's clearly an ego thing to him straight up. When it comes to how his voice got deeper, Jason now says he just controls the vocal range of it, but in the past he said he went through a second puberty and implies this was out of his control.
I went to the doctor because my voice dropped. And I was like, what's going on? I used to have a much higher pitched voice a couple of years back, and my voice dropped out of nowhere. And I went to go talk to my doctor because I'm like, what's going on? Because I was talking like 10 hours a day every day, right? And I was worried I had vocal cord nodules because you can develop like basically calluses on your vocal cords, and like that can turn into cancer and all kinds of other shit. So I went to the doctor and I'm like, yo, what's going on? They sent me to an ENT, which is an ear, nose, and throat doctor. They put a scope in my nose, a camera down to look at my vocal cords, and they're like, no, your vocal cords are perfect, man. And I was like, what the hell's going on? So I went back to my doctor. My doctor's like, hey, sometimes guys in their early and mid 30s can have second puberty. And your voice just drops. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, and it might happen to you again when you're 60, so maybe I'll get an even deeper voice then, which will be even more ridiculous. I can actually just control the vocal range of my voice. Just go like this and talk all the way down to the bottom of your vocal range. This isn't that hard. Then you go like this all the way up into your nose and talk like this. Amazingly, people's voices change over time, and they do this at different ages as you go through life. On top of this, streaming and talking for 12 hours a day doesn't make that any easier or better.
So, which is it? Did he go through a second puberty, or did he lie to everybody about the second puberty to explain why his voice got deeper? Obviously, the answer here is that he lied about the second puberty, and the reason why is pretty obvious. It's because admitting that you practice to get your voice deeper implies insecurity, and someone as egotistical as Jason would never want to show anyone they were insecure about something. I still think part of it was also because of that Elizabeth Holmes Theranos thing when talking with a deeper voice makes people subconsciously attracted to you more. But still, the fact that he lied about such a minute and tiny detail to his fans for so long is astounding to me, but we've seen this dude lie again and again and again and again, so it's not shocking at all. Speaking of lying, Jason also continues to lie about not cheating at Animal Well in another game called Outer Wilds, saying that if he wanted to cheat, he would just pull it up on one of his monitors rather than look at his phone.
A lot of people say that I cheated because I looked at my phone, because it was right here. Why would I cheat with my phone when I have a 3-monitor setup? It's a pretty easy way to talk about this. I have one monitor here that actually shows broadcast information, usually using game capture, so I could put a guide up here if I wanted to in the first place. This one is just OBS. I could put it right next to chat there, and it'd be really easy to hide it because I'm constantly looking at chat anyway. Or I could put it on the right and put it on another one where I put all my social media stuff. It doesn't make any sense to use a phone to look at a guide while you're running through a game like that when you could just look at anything else.
Fair point, but that still doesn't explain the obviously fake printer scenario that he said happened, or the fact how easily he figured out Animal Well compared to the rest of the entire Animal Well community playing the game. It's still very obvious that he cheated and won't admit it, and I find it hilarious because it all comes down to his insane insecurity of just having to be the smartest person in the room. And it's even funnier seeing him try to keep up this crumbling facade because his ego won't let him admit that he's not that super smart guy he portrays himself to be. Now, Jason conveniently doesn't go over how he and Kronos sent in a false DMCA to Brandon over his game, and so a comment would bring this up, notably saying why he didn't talk about the lawsuit he filed. If you don't know, a DMCA claim isn't technically a lawsuit, and so Jason would see this and play into the semantics despite knowing the true intentions behind the comment, even going on to lie again and say that Brandon added his voice into the game despite this being untrue. Again, it was a personal build that he was baiting people into buying his game on Steam under false pretenses, but given that Jason and Kronos didn't do their due diligence, they still sent in a false DMCA, and in Kronos' case, was very obviously showing his intention was to silence Brandon into submission rather than actually deal with the legal issue. Again, it's astounding to me how willing he is to lie about things that are very easy to prove false, but I've been repeating this so much throughout the video that it's kinda just part of who he is. Now, I had a theory as to why Jason refuses to mention any of the furry stuff, but thankfully I don't need to go into it as a future situation will bring a lot of much needed context and information that explains everything going on there much easier. On June 9th, 2025, Twitter user Lyric Wolf would drop a thread claiming that Jason emotionally abused and manipulated him for sexual and financial gain, and that whatever went down caused him to have to quit college and being a content creator. He has a website where he organizes all this information, but he also drops the full Telegram logs between the two of them, which is far more important to me, so let's take a look at them together here. To give a quick rundown, Lyric met Jason in February 2018 after he posted a video on YouTube about the music from his Heartbound game. However, it was in August later that year where they would hit it off after Lyric donated $800 to Jason's stream, and the very next day they would get into some very spicy NSFW furry roleplay together. It's stuff that I can't really go into much detail on given just how explicit and vulgar it is for YouTube's rules on the site. The images on screen are the best I can show without breaking them, but trust me, this is very tame compared to what else goes down. They would start planning to meet up at TwitchCon very soon after all this, and would continue to participate in NSFW roleplays as Lyric caught feelings for Jason in the process. Jason would even talk about him getting tested for STDs beforehand, very clearly interested in getting to the next level with the dude. He even posts his ferret furry persona Maldavius Figtree when Lyric asks what his persona is, further confirming that the ferret is Maldavius and he was lying about the TV character being them. Now, just to point out now, Jason has been lying saying these DMs are fake, and the reason we know he's lying is because he posted a never before seen picture of him in their DMs as you can see right now. And again, while we know the dude already lies about literally everything, it's just funny to see him continuously do it even when the evidence is stacked against him. On top of more NSFW furry roleplaying, Lyric and Jason would have various Discord calls together as they grew closer, and you can start to tell that Jason was now very clearly into the dude just as much as Lyric was into him shortly after becoming friends with one another. However, after seeing that Lyric got NSFW furry art with another person, Jason would get a little bit upset as he felt he was being unloyal despite it literally being just artwork, though this wouldn't lead to any issues, yet anyways. Jason would start to vent about how he was struggling to gain viewers at the time, but that's not too interesting. Unlike how this one time when a 14-year-old was spamming up his Discord with crypto links so much that Lyric would end up doxing him, with Jason saying that he used to dox people when working at Blizzard. Mind you, Lyric was 20 and Jason was 31 at this moment in time, and given that Jason used to work security at Blizzard for a bit, it makes me wonder if he was abusing his power at the company to get back at people he didn't like back in the day, but I digress. More roleplaying goes down as the days go by once again, but then they have a somewhat tense conversation together as Jason would say how he can't get a read on Lyric because he seems all over the place, and the way the messages read is in that very straightforward and aggressive way the dude is known for typing, showing his attitude goes back almost a decade now and very likely much further. They would make up though after explaining their feelings, and it was clear that Jason was still into the guy despite the small tension going on here. That is until just hours later he would get mad at Lyric for ERPing with the other dudes instead of just him, which is just hilarious to think about given they weren't even dating and the fact he's getting this bent over furry role plays. Like, he literally equates that to going down on someone in real life, and it's just bizarre and funny to read, as at the end of the day here, the people looking into this thought that Lyric has something deep to talk about, only for it to end up being a wishy-washy relationship with Jason and nothing more. Yeah, I'm sure y'all figured it out by now, but 90% of these DMs are just two dudes who are trying to lay pipe and clearly having a thing for each other. And frankly, nobody gives a shit about two people's relationships going bad, especially when it's extremely tame shit at the end of the day here. In fact, despite Lyric trying to say how Jason was manipulating him, none of this comes off as manipulation and instead just him clarifying their status and bluntly talking about his issues with how things are going, which even if he still sounds like an asshole about it, that doesn't mean he was manipulating Lyric, and it shows that Lyric was just very clearly wrong with his promotion of these leaks to begin with. Like those claims of financial manipulation, for example. Lyric says that he was being pressured by Jason to keep donating large sums of money to his Kickstarter for plushies of a character from Heartbound, but when reading the text, the most that Jason did was show excitement that he would generously donate large sums of money, like $500 at one point, for example, never not once trying to force him into giving him more. Lyric just liked seeing him happy and excited at the time because he was into him. He even says himself that he had the money when in reality he didn't have the money, it was just lying to make Jason feel better for seeing such a large donation, only for Lyric to now try and twist this narrative years later to get back at him now that he's a gigantic laughingstock by a majority of the internet. At one point, while trying to paint Jason as a financial abuser still, he shows how he donated $3,000 to the Kickstarter and how Jason was so excited but totally trying to manipulate him, guys, just trust him, only for it to turn out in DMs that he was reassuring Jason that he had the money and it was all for his happiness for him not to worry about it. He says that the reason he was manipulated into this was because Jason would make comments about how the Kickstarter might fail, but that isn't manipulation. That's just somebody worried about their project falling apart. And for Lyric to try and twist this and honestly lie about it is hilarious, as the DMs directly contradict that, DMs that he gave to everyone to see as well. Lyric would then change his pledge from $3,000 to $2,000 and tell Jason that he only did such a large amount so that he could push the Kickstarter to its goal, in which he tries to make it seem as if Jason is a bad person for showing disapproval to this when it's like, yeah, of course he'd be disappointed. $1,000 ain't no slack, and trying to paint it as if he's somehow bad for his response is ridiculous. Jason even states that he didn't know that was Lyric's intention, showing further how justified his response is despite Lyric trying to make it seem otherwise. Lyric would then lower it once more to $1,500 but say there's no evidence of them speaking about it on Telegram together and that it must have been because they were in a Discord call together. Fast forward to TwitchCon 2018, Jason tried to get away from his group to go meet up with Lyric in his hotel. In between 10:30 and 11 PM, Jason will lay pipe as he mentions in text that he was glad Lyric got tested for STDs prior. It seems like nothing else could come from this, but it would turn out the very next day that Lyric would find out Jason was still married to his wife at the time, and things would get very awkward very fast. Jason would then try to use the fact that he leaked some of his DMs with Shay, his roommate as of today as a matter of fact, as a way to twist the situation onto him and try to make him out to be the bad guy somehow, and their friendship would end that very day from that point onwards. So, it turns out that Jason wasn't sexually or financially manipulating Lyric. They both had a thing for each other and Lyric is just a scorned lover, with the most notable thing to learn from all this is that Jason cheated on his wife with him. We know this because Lyric provided Jason's marriage records, and we can see that they filed for divorce in February 2019, a few months after they went down on each other at TwitchCon, with that being finalized in August 2020. So yeah, Jason cheated on his wife with Lyric and has lied about the messages not being real because they're very embarrassing, and Lyric is rather delusional, thinking people will actually believe the false narrative he's trying to paint Jason in. As much of a piece of shit Jason is, none of the claims that Lyric made are true, and if Lyric instead led people on with the story that Jason cheated on his wife with him, he would have gotten a much better reception. Also, that whole part with how being Jason's mistress, or mister in this case, caused him to quit college is just bullshit. Dude is probably struggling already and Jason didn't do anything to cause him to drop his career further when reading the DMs. He's just projecting his inadequacies onto a bad experience he had with a former lover. What is kind of interesting though is that Lyric actually tried to come out about all this back on April 5th, 2019 in a since deleted Google Doc, but was shown off the internet as it backfired in his face. The reason why is because Lyric ended up charging back an $800 donation on PayPal in March, months after he and Jason stopped talking. So in a weird ironic way, it turns out he was financially manipulating Jason himself, as well as straight up admitting to committing fraud by lying to PayPal saying it was a typo on his end. Like, he tries to paint Jason ranting about this publicly as him being a bad person, but brother, just because you say you understand you messed up in the past about this doesn't make Jason's reaction unjustified. Because if my former lover took back $800 just to get back at me, yeah, I'd be justifiably pissed as well. In his lust for revenge, Jason would send copyright strikes to Lyric's channel to get back at him. Now, I don't care if this was technically legal or not, given it was over the music of Heartbound, as Lyric was a piano YouTuber. It's the fact that Jason didn't have an issue with this until he saw it as a way to get back at Lyric for charging him back illegally. You can even see the emails dated April 1st, just 4 days before Lyric posted his failed Google Doc, meaning that Jason was just abusing his power using YouTube's copyright system. And while we already know he loves to do that, it seems that this was the first instance of him doing it and seeing just how much power it gave him, hence doing that multiple times to various YouTubers in 2024 before people figured him out on his bullshit. Jason would obviously reply to this back then and reply to it again and call out Lyric for trying to manipulate people. But the only part I care about is when he heavily implies the logs are fake, but as we've seen already, they very much likely are not. Jason never tries to prove they're fake either, he just says it and expects people to believe him. And given how much of a liar he is and the fact that Lyric, despite having plenty of opportunity to take out parts that make him look bad, never once did, and if anything helped people figure out he's guilty in his own way, show me that they're legit. I don't expect Jason to prove they're fake either, so I'm just gonna assume they're real unless proven otherwise. Yeah, as you can tell, this story was not what it was promoted to be, as the worst possible thing that came from this was Jason cheating on his wife and abusing the YouTube copyright system to get back out of jail to a lover of his. A lover that has a lot of his own issues going on, as we can see by his poor attempts to manipulate the public himself, ironically enough. It didn't matter much though, however, as by this point in time people absolutely hated the man online for very justifiable reasons given his insane ego in a case of perhaps the most narcissistic gaming streamer ever. And that ego and narcissism will end up getting him into some trouble that very same June 2025, just weeks later. Now there was one more thing I wanted to say for its own chapter, and that was the whole incident with the Stop Killing Games campaign. To make a long story short, YouTuber Ross Scott will make a video in late July 2024 talking about his new Stop Killing Games campaign that he started so that if a game were to stop being supported by the devs due to server shutdowns or whatever, the companies would instead have to input some sort of end-of-life program for the title, basically making it where every single game purchase can be playable forever in some capacity. There's a whole bunch of legal stuff throughout as the initiative is based out of the EU, but it was seen as a great idea for gamers, especially those who were soured by Ubisoft recently killing off the crew entirely when shutting down its servers, as even though the game had a single player mode, it was now gone forever. The campaign would gain strong support but ultimately hit a wall, and so in June 2025, Ross would make an update video telling his audience how it's unlikely the campaign will reach its goal of 1 million signatures for the EU government to take a look into the entire thing to begin with. However, he would then start to talk about Jason and his coverage of Stop Killing Games, as at the time, he had the most viewed YouTube videos on the subject, and he would go on to show how he was blatantly saying false things about its goals and very clearly was misrepresenting the initiative, such as saying how it's only for single player games and how he thinks part of it is also converting multiplayer games to single player for some reason when that's not the case at all.
But he also seems to think this is about converting multiplayer games to single player. Once again, he made that up. And I have no idea why he thought that.
Transitioning an entire multiplayer server-side game into a single-player video game, which means rebalancing the entire experience around single-player, rebuilding everything in the entire game. How are you going to do that with Final Fantasy XIV? You're just going to make all the raids soloable? Imagine the day that World of Warcraft shuts down, and suddenly you have to make it a single-player game for every individual that ever bought the game. That's what they're asking for.
No.
Because they would have to sunset live service games as a single-player experience. The idea that suddenly you need to make every single live service game playable single-player offline? No, dude.
Correct. No. This one is particularly baffling to me because I've heard most counter-arguments before, but until Thor, I've never heard this one. That we want the industry to convert all multiplayer games into single-player ones. I keep saying it. You never know where gamers are going to take this.
Nowhere in there does it say that it's directly targeting always online single-player games.
Yeah, so why does he keep bringing it up? This is a total red herring.
It only gets worse as these were just things Jason talked about in his videos on the subject matter. As it turns out that during stream when he was live and therefore had no pre-planning his arguments in advance, he would just straight up bully and shit on Ross relentlessly for no discernible reason other than his overinflated ego seeping through once again.
Oh shit, now this is actually really dumb. It's used car salesman garbage. This is shit. It's shit. Not only do I not want to back this, I'm going to actively tell people not to. That is awful. That is a horrible goddamn direction. That's awful, dude. Now, eat my entire ass. The level of stupid that I just had to receive was like sitting on Twitter for 12 hours. This shit sucks. That's a really stupid ass move. That's an incredibly stupid ass move. I think this is ass. This is complete garbage. All of this can eat shit then. I drop the mask entirely. I have no qualms about that. They can eat my entire ass. The whole thing. That sounds stupid as shit.
In fact, in the reply after the video dropped as Jason was streaming, he said he declined to speak to Ross one-on-one because of what he says was the way he approached the situation.
You also didn't want to talk to Ross? I didn't. I didn't like the way that he was approaching the situation. I was very clear about that.
The thing is, sure, he might not agree with Stop Killing Games, but that doesn't explain why he bullied the dude for no reason, only that he disagrees with his approach, and at that, he got information blatantly wrong, which again, just makes him look even worse. He would even say on stream from way back when it all first started in August 2024 that he declined to speak to Ross because of what he said was his logic being disgusting.
If you're interested, I'd be fine with having a discussion with you on where we could at least clarify things, but your choice. I don't think I want to do that. And the reason why is this. It is because specifically your video that made me not interested in wanting to talk to you. It is specifically this portion of your video, right here, where you discuss reasons why your initiative could pass. And your description of this, I find to be disgusting.
Politicians like easy wins, and this doesn't require them to do much at all. And unless it involves gambling or protecting children, politicians generally don't care about video games. So this isn't of big consequence to them or most of their constituencies. EU law is already unclear on a lot of this practice anyway, and we would be making it easy for them to settle it. It falls in line with other consumer practices. You know how when you buy something, you're generally allowed to keep it? And finally, this is a diversion from really serious topics that politicians would prefer not to deal with.
So politicians are going to put this forward because it's an easy win, they don't understand the subject matter, and it's a diversion from more serious issues. I don't have any respect for that. And I don't have any reason to have a conversation with you because of this. Good luck. That was a cold response to the right one, because I'm sick of it. Yeah. It's a terrible argument from their side, and I think it's really bad for the industry.
So, it clearly sounds like Jason is defending politicians and their intellect based on that reply, yet when talking further about the movement in random streams, he then starts to say it's actually because he doesn't want the government to be involved in gaming, period.
The moment you have the government step in and try to regulate this shit, it's going to be awful. If you think the government can manage anything, you haven't been around long enough. Legitimately. That is a terrifying prospect. Letting the government get into video games is a terrible goddamn idea. Yeah, I told you before, I'm not a fan of the government. There's a reason for that shit. Keep them out of games. Stay out of games. No. They can't manage shit. They've never been able to manage shit. I don't want them in games. You don't want them in games.
So, he initially says it was because of the fact that Ross worded the initiative in a way that makes it seem as if the government is stupid, but then also says that it's because he doesn't like the government because they are stupid, so why does he care if Ross makes him sound stupid in the first place? None of what he says has any logic going on here. It just sounds like he was being contrarian for the sake of it, and instead of just taking the L, he would of course decide his next course of action was to keep doubling down on everything because he is never wrong in any way on anything ever. This would first make an appearance in a really long Twitter post that he's since deleted, and if I were to assume why, it's because Jason straight up accuses Ross of sending his community to attack him throughout the majority of it. Like, he tries really hard to twist this false narrative and make Ross out to seem like the bad guy, saying how his community is toxic and such. But it's so obviously just him being a manipulative little freak, which is why I believe this is the reason he deleted the post, as he very rarely deletes anything unless he knows it makes him look bad. And given his general lack of self-awareness, it must have been that bad if he noticed it himself. I mean, he even told his Discord the reason that he deleted it was because he was getting attacked. But like, come on bro, everybody can see the truth for what it is no matter how hard you try to lie about it. Now during this whole Ross Twitter beef situation, Jason was having issues with one of the biggest YouTubers in Moist Critical after he made a video talking about Stop Killing Games and why Jason's wrong. Jason was streaming as this video dropped, and during that stream it would all of a sudden go down out of the blue only for him to start up a brand new one about 20 to 30 minutes later. However, that stream and all VODs of it were completely wiped, meaning that Jason deleted them for some reason, and that was because he was trying to spin a narrative saying how Ross and Critical's fans are trying to attack him over stuff he definitely didn't misunderstand at all. The reason I know this is because I found an archive someone somehow managed to get, so thank you anonymous internet people for doing a good job here.
Moist Critical released a vid talking about me? Okay. That's cool. I don't know what his take is. I'm not too worried about it. I know everybody's going to want to cover this situation and talk about shit and everything like that. I released videos 10 months ago. So, more of the same shit. Different day. This time it's for videos that I released 10 months ago, and now I'm the Giga villain. They're bad because you misunderstood the entire thing? No, I didn't. If you go and look at my videos, I actually have 2 videos out on this very specifically. I talk about the entire thing, and I have a giant FAQ for it. So I didn't misunderstand it whatsoever. You can go and read that, but I'm going to be honest with you. It really doesn't matter. It's been 10 months, and I haven't talked about your initiative in almost a year. You came back here to get angry because you're failing. And I haven't talked about you in almost a year. Never accept responsibility? No, I 100% accept responsibility for my own words. That's why I left those videos up, and I'm not taking them down.
If anyone should take responsibility here, maybe if the legislation had been better written, then some people might have actually wanted to vote for it.
Target down.
Yep. But hey, that's my fault, right?
Now, after that first tweet didn't go in the direction he wanted, Jason would make a second one to try and reply to everything, with it being even longer than the last and not really worth getting into, to be honest. However, there's one part that is interesting, and that's when he said he never took down his videos he made talking about stop killing games at any point in time, only for Ross himself to point out he specifically remembers him deleting a stream where he was talking shit about him off his channel back when things started in 2024. Jason will then say that Twitch deletes VODs after 60 days and YouTube has issues saving streams over 12 hours long, going on to accuse Ross of lying to him about deleting the stream off the internet. Ross will point out the deletions happen within days and not the 60-day time period he just said, and Jason will further show how YouTube has issues with saving 12-hour plus long streams and that many are missing because of that, again basically saying that it was a YouTube glitch for why they were gone and notably ignoring anything about Twitch and their 60-day time limit despite the site not having that same issue. Ross will leave it at that as he doesn't know the intricacies of the streaming landscape, but would still reiterate that he swears they were deleted within days. So, Jason is basically saying that due to a glitch that the stream and VODs for the time he was talking shit about Ross are gone. Well, if only that were the case, as it would turn out that Jason was lying straight to Ross's face as back in August 2024 when all this was going down, Jason himself would admit in his Discord chat that he deleted that content because of what he says was harassment, but given how much of a victim he likes to make himself out to be at every waking moment, I'm gonna assume he's lying about that point as well. He even admitted this on stream for anyone who might think this is some sort of fake image or whatever.
And like, on top of it, I went through the Reddit for their initiative for that, and there were a number of posts in there that were people saying we should keep baiting him and attacking him because if we do that, he'll keep talking about it, then more people will sign the initiative. They were planning that shit. And those threads are still there. They're still up. People are still talking about that shit on there. So instead of that, I just deleted all the VODs where we were talking about it. I kept my videos up and I walked away. They can eat shit.
Him lying again isn't shocking, but it's definitely infuriating to see this happening, and it's even more infuriating seeing how he was being all snarky and shit in his Discord server saying stuff like, he actually had no idea how VODs work when he just bold-faced lied to Ross to get out of that one. Actual piece of shit, dude, I swear to fucking God, bro. Another part of that mega Twitter post was Jason saying how his internet magically went out during that stream, and when people asked what happened to the content, he said he took it down because of, you guessed it, harassment and hate going his way. He is always somehow a victim of something no matter how it goes, but everyone knows by this point that's just how he is as a person, full stop, and it just makes for more ridiculous stuff to dig through. Stuff such as how Critical will make a second video this time solely focused on Jason and how he had a talk with him after his first video only for it to go nowhere as he described him as one of the most narcissistic people known to man. Jason would get upset and show his annoyance for how he made the call-out video in his Discord server, but it seemed like just more pointless complaints that would go nowhere. That is until soon after his chat would start to light up about some deleted message a person made leaking DMs at somebody and how that was wrong. Now whose DMs were leaked, you might ask? Man, you already know the answer to this one. It was Jason leaking his DMs at Critical to his hug box, probably expecting them to coddle him, only for the first time ever to realize this dude is insane for leaking DMs at one of the most influential YouTubers just to have random ass people feel sorry for him. He even says that Critical did this to send his community after him, when as we know and as I've said already, this is not the case as he is against that and condemns the activity. Jason is just trying to victimize himself in any way he could as he continues to lie and lie over and over again. Now with all this news coming to light, all thanks to Jason's ego just not letting him stay quiet, many, and I mean many YouTubers that make videos about the dude. It was the most anti-pirate software content since the Managem incident, and so with this newfound attention, it was clear that things were about to get lit once again. For example, in his most recent video talking about Activision using AI, a comment would point out how comments keep disappearing, and Jason would confirm that he was deleting comments because of what he says was just harassment, but people would call him out on his lie as they saw plenty of comments talking about the drama without harassing him disappear hours later, and trust me, I saw a couple of them disappear as well, and it was clear he was just trying to keep the nice ones that suck him off before it became too much to handle as the internet did what the internet does. Jason will also stick to his guns about how he's against stop killing games despite it being obvious he was misrepresenting the movement since the beginning, and while people initially wrote it off as his stubbornness and ego peeking through yet again, there's actually one potential answer to why he was so against it. One of the game genres that Stop Killing Games will massively affect is live service video games, and it just so happens that the company he's the director of strategy at in Off-Brand Games is launching a live service game called Rivals of Aether 2. A game now is launching in October 2024, and a game now is launching just a few months after Ross's initial campaign. Now, Jason has said his disapproval for Stop Killing Games has nothing to do with Rivals of Aether 2 launching, but I'm gonna call bullshit on that one because the logic lines up pretty well for why he's so against the initiative since the start. While I have no way to prove if that's a lie or not and will likely never know the truth here, I'm sticking with my gut on this one because it makes sense why the guy who has an important role in a gaming company would be against an initiative that would make his life harder. Also, I see you over there, Ludwig, trying to play all coy and act like Jason is just some random employee of your company. Your fence-sitting and social climbing isn't gonna work on this one, buddy. Now, as far as Stop Killing Games is doing, after seeing that Jason was trying to derail it by misrepresenting the movement either maliciously for his own reasons or just out of stupidity, the internet was ablaze to get it past its 1 million signature mark or else, getting over 200,000 new signatures within a week of the situation coming onto people's feeds. The insane rapid incline of signees was a sight to behold, as now not only were more people made aware of what it sought out to do by letting people play the games they rightfully paid for forever, they also saw it as a way to say fuck you to Jason for what he did to Ross, making it two very understandable reasons for people to get involved. I mean, you had people making fan art of Ross as the Postal dude going around getting people to sign his petition, a post that was retweeted by the Postal creators running with scissors themselves, showing that actual real game devs are all for the movement as well, which was a sight to behold. PewDiePie himself, the biggest individual YouTuber ever, would even make a YouTube community tab post telling people to check it out, and given that, you know, he's fucking PewDiePie, this was seen as the biggest development of the movement and a huge sign that the internet might actually be able to pull things off here with just under a month remaining. I can't even make a list of all the names who back Stop Killing Games, otherwise we could go on for 10 plus minutes. It seemed like it was literally the entire YouTube scene from all corners of the site uniting together for a single cause. And honestly, it was a pretty beautiful sight to see everyone find one thing they can all agree on together for once. Well, everyone except Jason here anyways. By this point in time, it was July 1st, 2025, and it would become apparent that despite the challenge cutting it close to the finish line, that Stop Killing Games would get to its goal soon, especially when July 2nd got over 100,000 new signatures alone in just that single day. That same day, Jason would announce that he was leaving Off-Brand Games because people were attacking the games they publish and review bombing them due to his involvement with the company, with Ludwig even trying to perpetuate that narrative himself in a reply to that very tweet. However, while I do remember seeing a couple bad reviews on Rival of Aether 2 before they were deleted, people point out that the stats on Steam say otherwise and show that they were likely lying about the review bombing. I say likely because realistically, I would personally equate it to more like review rock throwing than bombing, but that's getting into semantics and that's not worth the time here. Point is, saying the games are getting review bombed was very hyperbolic and presented that way to build a victim narrative, as the only game that's been consistently review bombed has been Jason's own title Heartbound, not the stuff Off-Brand Games has published. Seeing that the Stop Killing Games initiative turned into not if it will go through, but when it will go through, Jason would beg for sympathy in his Discord server, saying how he's now heading to urgent care for whatever that reason may be. The reason was likely due to the upcoming Copen Seas Fest, as at 11:41 AM Eastern Standard Time, Stop Killing Games had hit its goal of 1 million signatures needed to make its way to the European government, meaning that after years of hard work that things were finally paying off. Even the skibbity toilet guy DeFuck Boom was rooting for the initiative the whole time, and if you got that guy in your corner, you know you were doing something right here. Gamers had officially risen up and within just under 2 weeks' time completed a task thought otherwise to be impossible, and it was a moment of celebration from all gamers of every walk of life across the world. Well, all gamers except Jason and his Discord server, that is. You see, Jason has a small cult of personality going on in his server, and the people within, while not really important at all to be honest, tend to say some really stupid and funny stuff, such as this user saying how the Stop Killing Games movement reminds them of the anti-vaxxers movement in what is one of the most retarded attempts at trying to bring politics into this mess. Someone would even say Ross was stalking Jason, which is just false, but you can tell some of them are so stupid, so it's just funny to sit back and point and laugh at them for saying such dumb stuff to begin with. The reason I bring the Discord up is because a mod would reveal that Jason was allegedly swatted on July 1st, which was a Tuesday, which if true, is a pretty insane thing to happen, as no matter how much of a manipulative, egotistical, narcissistic, smug asshole he is, no one deserves to be put through that. Of course, he doesn't help himself, as on July 3rd, he would tweet out trying to say how he didn't have anything to do with the initiative stalling back then, despite his own graph literally showing a noticeable decline in signatures after his videos came out. But the most interesting part was him taking partial credit for it going through by saying how making him the villain of the movement helped it out. The amount of ego somebody needs in order to even attempt to twist the narrative in their favor in a way like this is insurmountable, and yet despite seeing it happen, and the fact I've never actually seen an attempt so egregious like this in my life until now, I can't say I was shocked he tried this, because I wasn't. It also doesn't help that the one tweet he decides to hide is the one telling him to just take the L and let go of the ego and gain some self-awareness, but we all know that ain't happening and the show is only going to get even more entertaining from this point onwards. Now on stream just days later, Jason was still acting out as expected, saying things like how he hopes the people supporting SKG gets everything they want but nothing they asked for, as a way to sound too deep for me, as he was still clearly upset that it went through.
So, I'm going to be honest with you. I hope that your initiative gets everything you asked for, but nothing you wanted. And I'll leave it there.
People would also see him telling a viewer in chat saying that he updates Heartbound within the first week of the month, but back when he started updating the game again in February 2025, he said it was on the first of every month, meaning that he was shifting the goalposts here to no one's surprise.
Wish you would finish your other game first, though. We actually put out an update for Heartbound every month on the first of the month, which you would know if you ever actually looked at that page or knew anything about the game or had engaged in our community in any way other than coming over here, chat hopping, and posting from Reddit. You're interested in Heartbound, but you don't want to buy early access games anymore? Don't buy it then. Straight up. There is no reason to get it for you if you don't want an early access video game. I update it the first week of every month. We actually put out an update for Heartbound every month on the first of the month.
I mean, people would even find an old clip of Jason saying that QA work, the only other job that he had at Blizzard outside the security stuff, isn't even real game dev work, meaning that by his own logic, he was never a game dev at Blizzard and has been lying to people by implying as such.
Someone on Insta there saying you're never a Blizzard dev? That's because I wasn't. I was in quality assurance, and then I was the lead of application security, and then I was a senior red team specialist. I'm an offensive security specialist. I'm a hacker, dude. When the hell have I ever said I was a dev there? What? QA is part of the development process. They are developers. People make up all kinds of shit.
I don't got any words for this, but I ain't shocked about all this contradictory shit coming from him at all. Speaking of contradictory shit, remember how Jason was getting all pissed that people were review bombing off-brand games earlier? Well, here's his opinions on review bombing when it doesn't apply to him.
#FixDF2 has gained quite some traction, and it seems they've even taken some of your notes by conducting a good old-fashioned review bomb. That aside, I also wanted to clarify that this isn't the first time players voiced their concerns to Valve about the game. #SaveTF2 was the first iteration of the campaign, a peaceful protest conducted 2 years ago to alert Valve to the ongoing bot crisis.
If you want to affect change, you need to do it clearly, concisely. You need to not assume the way that the other party feels or assume what their actions are, and you need to do things like this. Show your distaste.
So he literally supports review bombing, yet gets pissy about it when his very own beliefs are applied to him. Insane behavior, dude. Now Jason wasn't just sticking to streaming to keep himself busy after all this, as it turns out that just 3 days after Stop Killing Games would go through, people would find him updating some stuff he was still selling on Second Life under his Maldavius Figtree name, with updates for Puzzle Block, The Tube, and some sort of customizable clicker animation thing all coming out on July 6, 2025. I find it strange he would head back to an era of his life he's very much embarrassed to talk about publicly, but that ain't really too interesting here other than pointing out he's still doing stuff on Second Life. What is interesting is that in this 4chan thread making fun of Jason that was started on July 3rd, an Anon would make a comment asking for proof that Jason had forced himself upon animals and says he doesn't care about his Discord logs or commissioning feral furry porn of his ferret character, saying that Kiwi Farms tends to overblow stuff. However, right in between all of that, y'all can see them asking for real evidence, except the Anon says, quote, "Give me evidence that I did that shit." Obviously, this implies the Anon was Jason himself trying to search for what his detractors were saying about him, and if you notice, the message was meant to be deleted after whoever this person is realized their grammatical mistake. But archives do what archives do, and now we got this to look at. Now, does this prove this is Jason? Not at all. But if this was a troll pretending to be Jason, trying to delete the message certainly makes things look a whole lot more suspicious here, as most trolls would try to leave it up to continue the chaos. However, it's also very possible the troll could be smarter about it and was 2 steps ahead of people by trying to delete the message to make it further seem as if it really was Jason, but given it's basically impossible to prove if this was him or not, I'm just gonna say this is a troll being extra smart about it unless news comes out in the future proving otherwise. Now back to those swatting claims. Jason would say this happened on Tuesday, July 1st at 9 AM while he was live on stream playing video games, and so I would go through the task of watching every single minute from 7 hours into the stream onwards just to give myself some extra breathing room in case it wasn't at this exact time for every moment he wasn't on camera. My notes are exactly as follows, with only 2 notable instances of extended time off camera being when he said he was eating a snack and when he went to the restroom, with the rest being seconds long and probably just drinking water or taking a quick stretch or whatever. You would think that if a SWAT team was at his house that he wouldn't be on camera for at least 20 minutes, and at that the viewers would hear all the commotion going on as they come through the house for whatever the false call may have been. Even when people were asking for him to prove this happened on stream on July 5th, he would instead berate them in chat for daring to ask for evidence to begin with.
proof? Oh, you just say proof over and over again? I'm not giving you the goddamn, like, police report, man, so you could dox me even further. Eat shit. Get out of my chat. Insane behavior, dude. Wild. Yeah, let me give you my police contact, too. Yeah, what a good idea.
He also allegedly got swatted a second time on the 4th of July as well, according to his Discord, meaning that we now have 2 alleged cases of this happening. There's even this one part in another stream on July 6th after all this where he again says he got swatted 2 times, but just seconds later says that they tried to swat him.
They swatted me on July 1st and July 4th, so they tried that twice, even though like local law enforcement knows who I am, and they reached out and they were like, hey, this is happening again.
So now Jason's saying that they tried to swat him, but that since the local police know who he is, they knew it was bogus, so now things are just back to square one again here. It seems that Jason was lying to people here, and trust me, knowing how much he lies and how often he does it, I was under that same exact impression, but during my research, I discovered a report showing that the police in his area were sent to the very block he lives on at around 8 AM that very July 1st day, and in that report it says they were given a false statement. Now, even though Jason says it was 9 AM, I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt here. And at that, the fact the police themselves confirmed it was something false and something that happened on the very housing block that he lives at around the time period he told people, yeah, it seems like somebody actually did call the police on him here to try to swat him. The only part that doesn't add up to me is that there's no part where Jason is off camera for a long period of time during this time frame, except for when he said he was getting a snack as he was gone for just over 10 minutes. This happened at around 7:40 AM as the stream started after 12 AM midnight, so maybe it's possible that the police were called earlier, showed up to his place and realized they were given a false report after he spoke with them, and then updated that report at 8 AM to show it was a false call. That's the only thing that would make sense here, so take that however you will. As far as him not wanting to prove it to people, given he says it's because he'd have to give out personal info to do so, and given the only way I could even show y'all the police report was bogus was looking into said info, it actually makes sense why he wouldn't try to prove it in this case. That still doesn't take away from him being a snarky asshole on stream or the fact he lies a lot, and the fact I even had to go through all these hoops to prove this happened because he's such a habitual liar is really annoying, but the truth matters more at the end of the day here. From what I gathered, someone indeed tried to swat him, and unless extra information comes out proving otherwise, this will be the story for now. Now things would get interesting as they would start to look into Jason's code for Heartbound and realize that it's extremely bad straight up. In fact, there's this one YouTuber named Coding Jesus who would make a video breaking it down and explaining his bad practices, in which Jason himself would of course comment on it to try and argue his way out of it instead of just letting it be, saying that his code is bad on purpose because it's part of an ARG for Heartbound that he's making and totally not because he's a fraud, but I digress. Now, I'm not here to judge whether the ARG is a pointless waste of time and how his coding and practices are garbage despite initially building his online identity as a former Blizzard dev before people realized he lied about that. But what I am here to show you is him talking more about the situation on stream in the early hours of July 8th, 2025, in which he talks about how he Hey, whoa, wait a minute. The stream's been privated. Why would Jason private his stream? He never does this unless he knows something bad went down and is trying to save face. Well, it turns out that as part of his little rant about Coding Jesus, Jason decided to post a link to his video in the chat showing his comment to boost the like ratio and send his audience after him.
Can you make a link to it? You have to click on the little 6 hours edited. Aha! Let's see. 6 hours ago. No, that just gives me a link to the... It just refreshes the page when I do that, man. So that doesn't seem to do it? Oh, do I have to right-click on this and then copy link address? And then do that? Is that what does this? Ah, it does highlighted comment. There we go. Boop. There's my comment on it. Enjoy. And I also have a whole argument with a whole bunch of people in the replies in there so they can see what's going on with it. I talked to them through the entire thing of why I did that all in an array, because that is not normal practice to do that, and it's specifically so that you guys can reverse engineer the game and solve the ARG. Sometimes doing bad practice has meaning, which is why I did it in that case, so that you guys could do those ARG components, and I've been saying that for years.
Now it's debatable whether he actually sent his audience after Coding Jesus or not, but you gotta remember, back during the Managem incident, Jason was complaining about streamers and other creators who were covering him and saying they were brigading him by watching the clips over and over again when that wasn't the case and he was just butthurt. So that same exact logic can be applied to him here when giving his audience a link to his comment on the video. It's no wonder he privated the stream. He knows it makes him look bad, and it's yet another example of his double standards seeping through yet again as we've all come to witness here. As we've come to learn today, Jason Thor Hall of the Pirate Software Internet brand is one of the most egotistical and narcissistic people we've ever seen, not just in the content creation space, but on the internet in general. He's not the game dev who worked for 7 years at Blizzard or this super smart guy he tries to portray himself as. He's that one guy you know in real life who embellishes a lot of things about himself, and in a good amount of cases, as we've come to see, outright lies about stuff to make himself look better so that he can satiate his unstable ego and insecurities. Despite this initially working when he blew up online, his sheer immense ego with the gravitational pull stronger than a black hole caused his facade to tumble down just as fast as he rose into prominence. Honestly, the main thing that keeps repeating itself throughout this video is this incessant need Jason has where he absolutely needs to be at the top of everything he talks about or is involved in. When watching his content, it became very apparent that everything he talks about is framed in a way where he's either the smartest guy in the room, the people around him are wrong somehow even to the most pedantic degree possible, or he's somehow a victim of something in whatever way he can spin it. It's rather strange as while I've known people like this in my life, I've never seen someone do this to such a degree as a man of the hour here, as the guy was literally so desperate to seem like the smartest man in the world that he was cheating at simple puzzle games and has refused to admit it despite it being very obvious he did. It's extremely bizarre to see, and the fact he continues to double down, no wait, triple down, actually fuck it, quadruple down, is just so entertaining to witness at this point, to be honest. Like, the dude literally goes by his middle name of Thor instead of his first name Jason. He says it's because he doesn't like his first name much, but guys, be real with me here. We all know it's actually because Thor is the name of the god of thunder and it's a name that sounds badass and fuels his ego. The signs are extremely obvious here. At some points it's really sad to see because you can tell he's insecure and needs to be seen as some sort of godlike figure, hence the way he acts and the name he goes by, but at the same time his ego is so high up and stuck in the very thunderclouds he wants to be a part of that you can't help but get a nasty taste in your mouth about everything surrounding his entire identity. There's this one stream Jason was on in May 2025 with Dr. K, a psychiatrist who makes content talking to internet figures about that kind of stuff as it's his profession, and I decided to save that for the end here, because if there's anywhere I would recommend to check things out for the full Pirate Software psychoanalysis, it's from a professional in that very industry. It is an absolutely fascinating video to watch because you can tell that Dr. K himself quickly figured he was talking to a highly egotistical and narcissistic man. He just wanted to say it because he didn't want to anger him and lose his focus, because there are so many parts where Jason talks in ways that very clearly show it as such. I don't want to make this ending a long stretched out clip compilation, so let me just play you what I think is a highlight of the entire experience.
A simple thing, and I'm not saying that you should do this, but I'm curious about this, is I've noticed that you tend to be incomplete. I've noticed that you tend to be complete with your answers. So when I look at that X thread, right, you try really hard and you do a great job. You're like, here's what happened, here's what happened, here's what happened, here's what happened, here's what happened. Have you ever tried to be incomplete with the smugness? Just talk about the smugness.
If I try to be incomplete with it?
Incomplete with the whole story and just focus on the smugness.
What does that mean?
Let me
like not give any context whatsoever?
Yeah. Let's say yes to that. I think that's a bit of hyperbole, but
just an emotional response?
No, just say, hey guys. So basically, you know, when you tell the narrative, you start with like, I made a mistake, everyone made mistakes, I was smug. And then there's a lot that comes after that. How would you feel about just ending it after that first paragraph?
I hate that.
Okay.
I have like an immediate emotionally angry response against that.
Very good.
Because it feels like idiocracy.
Okay.
It feels like that's too long, didn't read. I don't need all those words when few words do gooder. That I hate that shit. Like I super hate that kind of communication of like, there's a lot of people who just say like, oh, you should just say my bad guys. No, that does not in any way explain a situation. That doesn't tell you any information that is real. It is hand waving for the masses in a way that is disingenuous to what happened and disingenuous to the people that are involved. I feel like to do that would be just me lying for the sake of lying so that people would f off. I really hate that. That absolutely feels like idiocracy to me. 100%. I don't like doing hand waving gestures for the sake of hand waving gestures. I don't like that at all. And I don't know if that's a wrong thing to feel, but that feels f up to me.
No, I think it's great.
Do that. I could go on the internet and just be like, oh yeah, my bad guys, but like that's not real. It doesn't make sense.
I think that's great. So I think what I liked about that response, my hope, so we're not here to like rehab your PR, right? We're just here to have a conversation. And at the same time, over the last 2 hours, there's something about the way that I hear you talk that rubs me the wrong way. There's something about the way that you talk that seems dismissive. So I'll tell you where that.
No, I agree with that.
Right. So
No,
it's like, I made a mistake. We all made mistakes. Right. So there's something about your sentence construction. It's like, oh, yeah, Thor, I'm sorry I cheated on you, bro. I really do love you. You know, we both have flaws in this marriage. You see what I mean?
Now that you've cheated on me.
Yeah.
But like,
so there's something, and I don't think, and this is what's so tricky is like, I don't think you're wrong. Like I don't, and what we got
the way that
from
I
you.
feel about it.
Yeah.
Is that it? I don't even know if the word. It doesn't feel like a lie. It feels like appeasement for the sake of appeasement.
Yeah.
It feels like they're asking for something that they know is not real, and I'd be giving them something that we both know is not real for the sake of giving something that's not real, so that they stop being mad about something that doesn't make sense to me.
This is so fascinating because you can see that Jason believes by not giving context that he's lying, yet by making those long strewn out posts on Twitter trying to justify, in his case, what people have come to learn is him commonly lying or at the very least misconstruing something, he ironically does the very thing he sought out to not do according to what he told Dr. K. And the most interesting part is that he doesn't even seem to realize it. He's either so far up his own ass and in denial that he's not the guy he portrays himself as, or knows he's dug himself a hole too deep and can't get out of it, so he tries to keep up this facade. But if you ask me, after seeing how this guy is like during my research, he's definitely way too far up his own ass on this one. While there are people in this world who probably have similar traits to him, there are very few who are as insufferable as him on his level, and on top of that, even less who stream video games, and on top of that, even less who stream 10 plus hours a day, 5 days a week to thousands of people currently. There's really only one last thing to take from all this, and that's the fact that Jason here, the man who initially portrayed himself as a Blizzard dev, is so incompetent at creating a game that Yandere Dev, the most infamous video game creator on the internet known for his bad coding and coding practices, is unironically better at making games than him. I shit you not, Yandere Dev has been making more updates and more substantial ones at that on his video game than Jason, a game that's even in 3D and therefore harder to make, and I straight up crashed out initially when researching this part and coming to this realization and seeing that we found someone worse at making games than him. I still can't fucking believe it, dude. Yandere Dev and his awful video game production is stuff of internet legend, and Jason and his production of Heartbound has surpassed something that most people assumed would never even be matched up to due to the sheer incompetence that is Yandere Simulator's development cycle. He's literally Yandere Dev 2.0, dude, and it's still absolutely nuts to me even thinking about this when finishing up this video. Shout out to my channel members for helping support my content, and shout out to my bestie tier members Wrath Wolin, Nami, Cody, Laura Hertzman, Cheems, Daniel, Mystical GB, Hyper aka V, and Trendy Dragon. Go check out my Patreon and YouTube memberships if you want to support me yourself in the description below, and I hope you join as soon as you can. Throughout all the research I did when looking into Jason, there's been this one clip that has stuck with me since it started going around a couple weeks ago this past June, and that's when he said the most valuable lesson in life is to have a contingency plan in case things go south.
Wanted to ask, if you don't mind, can share with us, what is the most valuable lessons that you've learned in life?
I think the biggest thing is always have a contingency plan, no matter what it is that you're doing. Always. Always think about, if I were to lose everything right now, what would I do next? And if you do that, you will likely survive pretty much any environment. Anything that you could possibly do. And I think that's something a lot of people don't do. They go, well, I've got it good now, so I'm just going to live like I got it good. Do not grow to the size of the fishbowl that you are offered. Be a tiny fish inside of that fishbowl. Every time. No matter what.
This makes so much sense to me because, as y'all have seen throughout this video, he's been getting kicked out of gaming communities and probably just general friend groups pretty much his entire life since he was 18 years old. And seeing him say this means that those experiences have clearly left some kind of impact on him if this is what he deems as the most valuable lesson in life to have. It's one of the very few honest looks into the guy coming from the man himself, and it's honestly kind of sad to see this because he can now add his streaming career to the mix, as it's likely going to wither away in a slow and painful death unless he fixes himself and his mental issues. Or he'll continue to dig himself this giant hole he's found himself in and blame everyone else around him except himself. And seeing how he's been acting even after the WoW incident and now to stop killing games one, it's looking to be like that.